The following video you are about to watch is an exclusive AI implementation training that I did a few months back for a selected group of entrepreneurs. We will go over the 3 ways to identify use cases within an organization, the prioritization framework used to find the highest ROI use case, and finally, the 3-step layer for implementation. With that said, hope you enjoy. Let's get started. Okay, so AI implementation blueprint. The overall goal of this is we're gonna cover 3 main areas for you to go through when thinking about implementing AI within your business. So the first thing that we are gonna cover is understanding the different AI use cases and understanding the different use cases based on the different processes that you have within your companies. The second thing is related to how to prioritize those, and the third point is actually the implementation side of things. So how to think about the implementation and what are the steps that you can follow when it comes to the implementation. So first off, the most important thing in general is starting with understanding the AI use cases. And the thing that we need to do over here are mainly 2 different things. So first off, we need to understand how to find the different processes within your business. And secondly, we need to understand the level of actual delegation of AI delegation, as I call it, within those kind of processes. So for this, there are 3 main ways that you can use to come up with the different processes and the different list of processes. There's one way which is a org chart way. There's one way which is a process way, and another which is a department way. So which one to choose? There are a couple of opinions and there are a couple of different approaches. The reason why there is 3 of them instead of just one is that it really depends on the kind of business that we work with. So there are a couple times where we work with bigger businesses. There are a couple times where we work with a single department or a business that already have some structure approach. So that is why we have different approaches over here. Just so you understand, the org chart is mainly focused on businesses that have more of a structured organization, so and different reporting lines. The process approach instead is businesses that already have all their processes laid down and mapped out, so they have all the workflows, all the different things. Meanwhile, the department is probably the one that I would suggest if you are starting out with automation and you want to focus on specific solution on a specific department. And that's it. So those are the 3 main approaches to start with. Over here, there's also an explanation. And by the way, I will give you this document. I will give you the recording later on also with everything over here, as well as all the resources that are present inside. First off, the initial approach is this one related to the org chart. And you can think about that as thinking about looking at the business through the lens of who does what within the company. And so the first focus is understanding the actual structure of the org chart, understanding the actual structure that you have. And secondly, mapping out the different processes based on the different responsibilities of each position. So to give you an example of this, what we do is we start off by mapping out an org chart. This is an example of what I did in the past with my own org chart and different things that we have, different positions that we have within the business. And keep in mind, those can also be positions that you fill in different roles. So for me, for example, as a small business, I'm focusing on CEO, head of sales, and CMO. Meanwhile, there are also other people within the business with other roles. But the overall goal over here is identify the different job roles, and then based on the different job roles, map out the different responsibility for the job roles. So those are, for example, have a couple of responsibilities for a specific role, such as an inbound SDR, to review and respond to all new leads, qualify leads, update lead status, basic product and pricing information, things of that nature. So this is the first approach that you can take for mapping out the different processes. The second one is this process-based approach. So the overall goal is to look at your own business as a set of different processes or as a set of, or as a flow. So you start off by looking at the beginning on where you attract your clients, all the way through how you deliver the different products and the different services that you have. And you can also add a specific retention cycle that you add in this kind of process. So the idea here is divide the process that you have and use a flow charting tool such as Miro, such as Draw.io, whatever kind of tool you want. And then for each step, you can map out the different processes, and each of the different processes can be broken down into different tasks. So to give you an example over here, what I added over here, I don't know how much visible it is, but it's the process that we follow for lead generation, sales, and delivery. This is, of course, a very simplified thing, and you can get in as much detail as you want, but also with this way, you can have a way more visual representation of the different processes that you have, and you will come up with a list of the different processes using this approach. Couple of things that I mentioned over here, which is also useful when you are doing this kind of exercise, is you can implement some kind of color grading system. So like if you have specific areas of the business where you have problems related to bottlenecks or decision points, you can apply that, or any other things of the nature. Or another thing that you can do, another cool thing that we do sometimes is we identify roles within the actual process. So I'm kind of using the first approach with this second approach to identify which are the roles involved with a specific kind of task, which is useful to identify the actual ownership of a role. So this is the second option. The third option, I would say this is probably the simplest one. So with this, the idea is you want to identify quickly AI opportunities without doing workflows, without mapping out different areas. And so this is more of a brain dump kind of approach where you focus on a specific department, or you have the head of a specific department focus on that department, and then you start with the 3 different levels. So an example here is you start with high-level activities. So you start with different things such as we need to handle all customer support, or we need to oversee all onboarding and everything along those lines. And then you do a breakdown of each of those tasks into more specificity. So you start off with specific task related to a specific high-level activity, and then you can go further into detail with those kind of activities by including like regular kind of tasks such as reporting, such as operational tasks that you need to do every day, reviews, those kind of things. To give you an example of this, since I think this could be useful, I added the marketing department breakdown over here. So the idea over here is you start with the strategic level. So you start with a couple of main ideas of segment that you focus on. So a couple of examples could be you start with advertising management, you start with the creative creation, those kind of things. Then you go into the tactical level, so the different activities or the different main areas of the marketing department. And then you go back to the operational level, which will be the actual task that you're going to analyze. So this could be, as I mentioned here, writing the social post, monitor engagement, responding to comments, updating marketing calendars, and that's it. So this is the first step. And with this, you start with understanding the different processes. After you get an understanding of that, the second step is actually understanding the use case, or how much of that specific process can be delegated to AI. One really important thing for me, and one really important thing that I tell every single client, is that when we are implementing AI into a specific business process, it's never a binary choice. So it's never about the choice between this is all manual or this is completely automated. But instead, I think it's way better to think about it as different implementation levels that you can use. The reason for that is simply because there are some activities that are really, really difficult to completely automate. And so it could be really difficult for you to start a project with the idea of completely automated that, and that could lead to a failure early on. Instead, if you approach the same process in a gradual approach, starting with the AI assisted, for example, and going forward, then it becomes way easier to continue the process and having success with a specific thing. So yeah, the real understanding and the real key insights specifically for this kind of part is always thinking about the how much of this process can be automated, can be delegated to AI, or can be delegated to AI automation, if we want to say so. Here, I added an example of this, and the example is related to content creation, for example, which is a key topic around AI and a key topic that a lot of people talk about. The initial stage with content creation, and I personally do the same with every kind of client, the initial stage is always starting with AI-assisted content creation. So AI assistant means you have some kind of custom GPT, you have some kind of custom prompt that you use to do specific things to help you with the content creation. So that could be either generating the ideas, having an initial brief, but you still have all control and you manage everything. Yeah. And then what you can do is you can proceed into different steps. So you can proceed into partial automation. This means, for example, drafting articles by following a specific approach that you have, and then you can suggest improvements and then approve what is good for the AI. Complete automation, which means the content calendar is managed by the AI, and you only review the content once per week, for example, to make sure that everything is correct. And finally, the autonomous version, which is like AI does everything. I would say 99.9% of the companies don't achieve this kind of level, because this kind of level requires a lot of time frame in order to iterate on the kind of content that you want to create. And I think is, at least to me, is way better to start with an approach that gives you good result and then iterate and improve later on if you really wanted to, which is also another key component that we're gonna see in the implementation plan later on. The couple of things over here is that if you start small, you have an understanding of AI and you start to build a trust in the AI capabilities. So you learn about this smaller implementation and how you can do better things through AI. You refine the process, and then also this is really helpful when it comes to adapting data for the team, because the team starts to use data, starts to get the first taste of data and get an understanding of that. And so later on can get an understanding of how this actually helps them improve everything that they do around that. So with that said, there are two different things that we generally do, or two different frameworks that we generally do when assessing the AI delegation, which again, the AI delegation is how much of a process can be potentially automated. And the two approaches are this 80-20 one, so this initial one, which is if you are in a hurry, or there's a comprehensive one. So for the 80-20 one, what we do here is we ask three main questions. So we ask if the process is so this needs to be done for every single process, by the way. So first step is you identify all the processes, and then you start doing you start to use this kind of framework. So the first question over here is the process rule based? The second is, do we have the actual data to train the AI? And thirdly is, what is the actual human element? So there are a couple of reasons why we ask these three different questions, but I think here I wrote a great analogy about that. So you can think about implementing AI generally like building a house. And so the process structure is the actual blueprint of the house. So you can think about how clear is the actual plan that you have for that specific process. The data part is, or the data availability is, what are the building materials for the house? So do we have what we actually need to build the house? And then finally, the human element is, how complex is the construction? So this is, how much expertise is required, how much nuisance is required to do a specific task. And this encapsulate three main things, which are the pattern recognition part and like the ability for AI to follow rules, learning from examples, which is really, really, really important when it comes to using AI generally across all your different workflows. And then finally, it's about repetitive task processing. So if AI, if you do some task that is repeated over time and everything is standardized, then there's no actual human element. Meanwhile, if you need to do something and there's a lot of human element or creativity that goes with that, then means that the human element will have a low score, as I put it over here. So with that said, you can, here's a scoring guide that we can use, and here are the different things about the different parts of AI potential that we can use. So a couple of examples that we have are these three different things. By the way, I will use this as examples throughout the presentation for different areas, but I think those are really, really good when it comes to examples and functions of different parts of the business. So one thing is lead qualification, which is a very, very useful use case for AI. Couple of things here. Is the process rule-based? Yes. So you generally have a couple of ideas of which are the ICP within your business. Do we have the data? So I suppose you have data about who was an ICP of your business in the past. What is the human element? Here the process is here this could be probably either a 2 or a 3. So because the process is pretty standardized and there's no kind of nuisance of understanding that. So the actual AI potential for this is fairly high. For content creation instead, this is a little bit different, and that is why I did that whole explanation before about the different stages of AI implementation, and this could be an actual low AI potential. And finally, for email responses, here, process rule-based. It could be rule-based depending on the kind of email. So if you just need to respond to specific kind of emails with AI, this could be 2. Do we have the data? So if you have data about how you respond to previous emails or how you generally respond to different kind of emails, this could be 3. I suppose every kind of business has that kind of data. And finally, the human element is not always very strict. It could require a little bit of a different level of humanization depending on the complexity. And so this leads to a total of 7. So this means that the potential here is medium. The important thing over here related to the AI potential that I need to mention is that it's not that if something is low, it means that it cannot be automated. The reason why something is low, it means that it can be automated, but it makes sense to start from the initial part. So as I mentioned over here, if something is low, it makes sense to start with AI assisted. Meanwhile, if something is more on the higher end, it also could make sense to do other different things and start for complete automation or start with partial automation, for example. So that is a very important concept when it comes to this. So this is an example of the 80-20. This is something that you can apply. And then what we have over here is we have a comprehensive AI implementation question. So in here, the questions are essentially very, very similar. The only thing is we divide each of the section. And so instead of having 3 questions in total, you have 3 questions per section, 1 for process, 1 for data, and 1 for human element. So over here, what you have is everything related to how structured is the process, consistency, clear decision points. For data is about availability, data is clean, how accessible is that. For human is how much emotional intelligence is required, how much creative thinking, how complex is that. So with all of this, you can do the comprehensive AI implementation part. What I did for you over here is I added the blueprint. I created this within Airtable, and so you can potentially use this one over here. Let me add the password that I added over here. So the password over here, you can copy the full base. So what I did over here is I added a list of potential business processes, and then over here you can go to AI delegation framework, and then over here you have some additional insights related to the different areas and the different questions. So in this way you can have a better understanding of how you can answer to each of the questions. So yeah. So in this way, you start to have the list of all the processes, and you start to get an understanding of which one has high potential for AI and which one has low potential for AI, or medium potential, whatever the case. After this initial part, we do the actual business prioritization. The reason why we do this is that the AI use case part is going to be useful both here as well as later on when we do the implementation plan and when we do different parts of the implementation. So for the business prioritization, what we do is we use this framework, which is called BITE. There are here 4 main areas that we focus on on this part. First off is business criticality. So how important is this process in our business to experiment with, and can we actually potentially fail in experimenting with that kind of process? So this is really important because if you are experimenting with something like I don't know, filling out tax forms or something along those lines, it would be very difficult for you to actually think about experimenting with AI when working with that kind of process, because you cannot mess up on that specific thing. So that is something to keep into consideration over here. The second point here is impact potential. So impact potential is about what are the different things related to how much time can you save, how much cost could it save, or how much revenue can you generate out of that specific process being automated, or if you could have a combination of the three. Time to value instead is how long would it take to make sure that this process could be automated, and this is actually this also depends on the AI implementation level. So if we want to start with something like the AI assistant implementation, it's something that could take you 1 to 2 weeks if you really wanted to. If you want to do something that is very broad, it can take you way more time. So that is something to consider. And then finally, what we have over here is ease of implementation. So how easy would it be to implement? This is related to the AI implementation scoring that we create before. What we do over here is we do again the scoring from 1 to 5. So before we did 1 to 3, right now we did 1 to 5. And in this way, it's really helpful because we can identify the different areas of the business to focus on. So here are a couple of examples of 2 different processes. So first off, there's this process related to lead qualification. And as I mentioned, I will use this a lot in the examples. So over here, in terms of business criticality, I would say this is a 4. The reason why is that this is not mission critical, so it's not gonna blow up your business if you miscategorize some kind of lead. Plus, errors are still recoverable, and there might be some dependencies later on in the sales process if you, for example, delegate a lead to a specific sales rep compared to another. And so, in general, there's a low risk for experimenting with this and good potential for experimentation. So over here, A score of 1 would be something that you do not experiment with, and a score of 5 would be something that there's no problem in actually experimenting with. Impact here would be a 5. So based on what we saw, depending on different businesses, you could save a lot in qualification time. You could save also in the cost per qualified lead, because you know which kind of leads to reach out to, and which is the frequency that you need to reach out for each specific lead. Revenue also. So it's not direct, but if you know that a high intent lead reached out or filled out a form or did some kind of actions, what you can do over here is you can respond faster, or you can set up system to respond faster, and this actually leads to higher conversion. Couple points here. Yeah, quality. So this is consistent because you establish consistent qualification criteria, as well as scale. So like this kind of process, doesn't matter the amount of leads that you have. If you have 100 leads, or if you have 10,000 leads, the system can scale without any kind of problem. The only cost that you will have is the additional API cost, or the AI of the AI cost, and that's it. And finally, over here, time to value. So you can think about the kind of implementation that you can do. And an example here is if you do an AI assisted implementation, this would be really, really fast. So it could start with 2 weeks really. So like, for example, what you have is you have a prompt that you use, and every time you get a new lead, you just paste their LinkedIn profile into that specific prompt and see and have a response directly about the lead. This is an example of AI assisted usage. And so you could have a response fairly quickly, and then you can start iterating and approaching the next steps of the implementation later on. And finally, over here, we have ease of implementation. So this comes back from the different AI implementation scores that you created prior. So like this is a 332, so this means this is actually higher in the implementation. And this actually is a high priority candidate, and something that in general we automate quite a lot when it comes to different businesses. The second example that I have over here is the content creation process. So again, I use this example again, but in terms of business criticality, again, this would be either a 4 or a 5. So because this is not a critical process to the business, you can still understand you can still review the content before it's sent out, and this is actually ideal when it comes to implementation. In terms of impact, really depends on the business, and really depends on how the business needs to create content, or how much of the team needs to create content. So a couple of examples that I did over here could be 40% reduction in content creation, savings on the content production side of thing, and this could be the revenue impact here could be indirect, because you produce more content, more people see your stuff, more people come in contact to you. And so I would say this is a 3 or even a 4 probably. Time to value here, this could be a 3 or a 4 depending on the implementation. Since this process is a little bit more complicated, it could require a little bit more time when it comes to seeing the results that you generate with AI and testing the results. And so that is why there's a 3 over here. And then ease of implementation, depending on the scoring that we gave before, this is a 2. So that is that. And finally, over here we have a 13 out of 20 recommendation part. Within this graph over here, what you also have is the byte framework. So again, similar to the AI delegation framework, over here you have different things explained if you really wanted to, and so you can compile this and you can do that for every single area. So here we have business impact. impact potential, time to value, ease of implementation. And so this also is an additional tooling that you can use and that you have at your disposal. So finally, the last part after the two components, after the two different elements of understanding AI ideas and prioritizing those ideas, is actually thinking about how you're going to implement those within the business. So when at this point, what you have is you're going to have more or less 5 to 10 different processes that can be automated. And what like the steps that you can take from here are the different are based specifically on the AI implementation score. So the important thing here is that lower things in the AI implementation score means that you can start with the lower level of the implementation and then gradually go to the top. Meanwhile, higher level could mean you can start at higher level of the implementation directly. So I'll show you what I mean in a graph in just a couple minutes. But ideally, we have different kinds of implementation layers. So we have one layer here, which is like direct integration, which means if you need to build something today for tomorrow, this is where you go to. So this means looking up at different tools that already have some specific features that you want to have, or creating some kind of prompts that already has the solutions or the different things that you have. You can think about those things as kind of plug and play solutions, something where it's like you create a prompt and then you implement that into your own use case immediately to see whether it makes sense or whether it generates actual useful things. So a couple of things over here which are useful is you either look into different tools that are already built specific to different areas. You look into custom GPTs or you build your own custom GPTs, which is like basically an AI, basically a chat GPT with some kind of document that you give plus a specific prompt that you can create. Or you look at some kind of no-code solution where you can implement the AI directly. So those could be a couple of examples or a couple of things. An example of this one could be the automated email responses that Google created. So like, for example, right now, if you are on the Workspace account, Google has the functionality to automatically create emails from there. And this is an actual example of direct implementation. And so what you can do as a company, for example, is just think about what would be the prompt that you could use depending on specific kind of emails that you need to respond. Just create that and then paste that and use that to draft your emails. This is this is the first level that you can do. The second level over here is the workflow level, and this is generally where we start when we are working with different businesses. And so this is about connecting the AI to different business tools or business processes that you already have, such as, I don't know, your CRM, the Facebook ads, or whatever the case, or different documents that you have within your business, and creating an actual workflow that is recurring, that works over time. The general implementation time here is a little bit longer because it could be weeks or months, depending on the complexity of the project. And it could be a little bit more technically demanding. So like those could be the problem related to this specific thing over here. A couple of things here could be the chatbot, for example, version where like you respond to specific things or specific question that you have about your business. You have specific automation pipelines, such as, for example, automatic lead qualification. Every time a lead comes into your business, you go through a process, you qualify the lead immediately, and then it gives you a response on Slack whether to follow up with that specific lead or not. That could be an example of a process. Or different things that you can implement as a workflow. Also, internal knowledge base means having something in Slack where you ask for a specific document and it gives you back that kind of document. So this is the part related to workflow integration. Then finally, the third level over here is system integration, which is like the next step. So instead of just having one single workflow, you have multiple different workflows that are together and that create some kind of system. So an example over here, if I make the example of sales, could be you have the lead qualification, you have the part related to taking notes, you have the part related to drafting proposals, you have the part related to creating a contract, and all these different tools work together, add different data together in your own source of truth, so in your own CRM or wherever you keep your own information, so that you actually have a semi-automated solution that works across different parts of the business. Yeah, this is the part related to like different custom agents, different retrieval systems, and different integration. So that is generally this is not the approach where you start with. This is like where you want to go, but in order to go there you need to start in the two previous levels. So what I added over here is the example of the roadmap and the things that needs to be done in general at each level. So in the first level, if you start over here, the process is pretty simple. You just either find a tool that is relevant for your use case, or you create a prompt for that specific use case, and you just test. You just start testing and see what is the result that you're getting, and and see what is the actual, and get a feeling of the actual result. So if the result is not good, you just refine and you tweak some things about what you do within the prompt or different things like that. Meanwhile, if the result is actually good, you start thinking about the next step if you really wanted to. So an example here could be for content creation. You can start with this flow, and then you come up with a solution where you got AI that is helping you generate a huge part of your content, and then once you are here, you start to think about if you really want this to be the next step, or if it makes sense to integrate different use cases within the business. If this is not something that you want to focus on, you can just keep it as a level 1 integration. Like for me, for example, for content creation, I'm very cool with keeping this as a level 1 integration, because I don't need to create thousands and thousands of pieces of content. I just need this as a partner that helps me improve the content creation process. Meanwhile, if it's another process, if you want to have that as a part of the workflow, then you start and go to the second route. And the second route is actually mapping out the complete workflow. So similar to the process that we saw in the process approach that you want to do. If you already done that kind of approach, you already have the kind of workflow. You start with the creation of the workflow. Generally, the creation of the workflow, there are a couple of tools that can be used, and it really also depends on your approach, but you could use something like a make.com and N8N, those kind of tools. You test the workflow for a couple of weeks, ideally 1 or 2 weeks, to see what are the results that you're generating with a kind of workflow. And then again, you start over here and you understand whether the result is good. If it's not, you refine the workflow, you refine the tool. If you want to keep the system as is, you just keep it as is and you focus on other different areas of the business. Or if you want to have that integrated across other different elements, you start with full system integration and you start to think about how you can integrate other different elements that might be similar to the business. So that means define the tooling, define the behavior for choosing the different workflows and choosing different things, and then start with the testing part and different things like that. One thing related to the implementation part and this kind of process and this kind of thing, and one question that people might have would be related to different tools or different things that they can use. So what I have over here in this document that I will send you is also this part related to a couple of different tools that you can use related to different things, as well as the different integration level that you can add within the tool. So over here, there are different integration levels, so such as direct integration, workflow integration, and system integration, and a couple of different use cases over here depending on the tool that you use. So yeah, this is pretty much it when it comes to the implementation side of things. What I wanted to go through over here is a strategic process. So I don't want to give out the top 3 things that people can do when it comes to implementation, because to be frank, you can go on YouTube, you can find a video about that, and you will be satisfied with that. Instead, what I want to have over here is kind of a process that you can follow, and the same process that we follow internally when it comes to thinking about the different areas of the business and thinking about the process that you can use. So yeah, the final checklist over here of things that you can do are this thing. First off, you list out all your processes. You choose one of the 3 approaches. You use the delegation framework. You can use this internally. You can use this business process over here. If you go over here, you can copy the base. I don't know how much familiar are you with Airtable, but you can just copy a base and then you can just work within the base. And if you want, I can also give you a rundown later on. You start with the prioritization based on the business processes, and then you define what is the kind of approach that you want to have.